So we've got a couple of questions here, and because this is a QA session, we should get back to this. So one of the ones is, can one of the panel elaborate on the success of the somatulene autogel injections prescribed for NETs? So for those who don't know, somatulene autogel is one of the long-acting, what we call somatostatin analogs, and it's injected on a monthly basis, and it can suppress the hormone production, but also it can also prevent the growth of tumors. And in a clinical study, in a randomized trial, one of the several that was published in the last few years, it was shown when given early in the diagnosis of a patient's journey, can delay the time to which the tumor grew and spread. So we hope that the government will have it funded soon for that purpose, but we've been using it for a while to relieve symptoms and to control disease overall. And the Americans produced a study several years ago when these drugs first came out, and they did what's called a before and after look. And before these drugs were available and after, and the overall population survival was actually better just because of because of the advent of drugs such as this. So we think it's an important part of the treatment of patients with neuroendocrine tumors in suppressing tumor growth and controlling symptoms. Another question there is, what does serotonin intake indicate? I'm on an antidepressant of answer, which is selective serotonin. Mustafa might answer that one.
So serotonin is a chemical that's involved in transmitting signals within the nervous system. So in the brain, when the neurons talk to each other, the serotonin is part of the messenger, so it changes to a different chemical. Outside the brain, in the other organs, serotonin, if it's released into the bloodstream, it causes the flushing. But if you're taking an antidepressant that's a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, it's not going to work in the bloodstream to stop the flushing. It's a different interaction. So although the name is the same, but they do different things. So you should not confuse the serotonin reuptake inhibitors with the treatments for neuroendocrine tumors, because that one works inside the brain, which is not part of the body involved with neuroendocrine tumors.
Well, while you're talking about serotonin, one of the questions here is about diarrhea. Not a great topic, but it says here, will diarrhea ever stop? And in this particular case, patient says they don't have the syndrome, just a resection. So the point of the question highlights something that's quite interesting, is that not all diarrhea is the same, and there are many different mechanisms for diarrhea for a patient with neuroendocrine tumors. First, it depends on where the tumor is, what organ of the body is affected, and whether you're also secreting or not secreting a hormone. So you could have a situation where your tumor is actually gone. You could have lost your pancreas. But as a consequence of losing your pancreas, you've lost the function of the pancreas in terms of its production of digestive enzymes. So you have a form of diarrhea, which we call steatorrhea, for which you can actually help by giving enzyme supplements to help do the function of the pancreas by helping digest food. And then there's the other type of diarrhea, Mustafa alluded to earlier, where you're producing this hormone that just causes a watery diarrhea. And then there's the one that's related to serotonin. And the drug somatulene autogel and the other one that's available, these can suppress that serotonin-based production to reduce the diarrhea. And we also have a new drug at the moment we're hoping will get funded in Australia called telotrustat. It's an oral drug that also works on the pathway of production of these nerve transmitters that can produce diarrhea. And so diarrhea is not, it's like neuroendocrine tumors are not all the same. You've got to ask, what is it? Diarrhea is also very complex as well. So other people on the panel.
Sorry, Alexander. Just staying on the topic of octreotide and their analogues, there are a couple of other questions relating to carcinoid crisis. Okay. I have verbal diarrhea, obviously.
He's a colorectal surgeon. You've got to give him the floor.
Sometimes it's really important to know what sort of effects you can have from surgery. So if you, for example, have a neuroendocrine tumor that's located in the ileum, terminal ileum, where the appendix is, and then the treatment could be, for example, what we call a hemicolectomy, where you take part of the colon, part of the small bowel. Now, the thing is, in between that small bowel and colon, there's what we call a valve, and the valve makes your small bowel content, which is very liquid, only portion-wise get into the colon. Now, if you do a right hemicolectomy, you lose that valve. And so diarrhea is actually a quite common symptom of post-surgical complication, for where there's different treatments like the cement and other medication that's simply directed at absorbing more water from your colon. So that's a significant point to make.
John, you want to, we'll raise the topic of the
yeah, I
carcinoid
guess
syndrome
just
crisis.
answering some of these questions, and on, as I was saying, the octreotide topic. Carcinoid crisis, some of you will experience if, and you have different precipitants or triggers. I've handled a number in my anaesthetic practice in cardiac and otherwise in the perioperative around the time of operation. When you're handling tumours, it's not uncommon. If you do need information, there was a topic of carrying octreotide. It is found in most rural, it should be found in every rural and metropolitan hospital in pharmacy. But we do have information produced by the Unicorn Foundation that can be carried with you in a card. And I would encourage all of you to wear a MediAlert bracelet of something to that effect. The accurate treatment of carcinoid crisis is an adrenaline or noradrenaline or some of the other things we have, but it is octreotide, and octreotide is safe to give in certain doses. So it is wise of you to definitely look at the website or speak to our net nurse, or I think we've got some information outside, but carry something like that because it is quite a specific treatment for it. And also for you, keep a diary of when it may occur, and let your oncologist know if there are definitely any triggers in that, and it may be related to your long-acting octreotide dosage or
and
whatever.
especially if you're going to have a procedure and you haven't seen your oncologist for a while and the pattern of your symptoms has changed, that's really important to let us know, because that's when we worry that a crisis could be triggered more likely. And we've learned the hard way in developing a policy of prevention through having a country patient sent to us who we hadn't seen in the lead up to coming in for the procedure, and ended up having a crisis. But obviously, as a result of that experience, that patient did well, but we learned to have a policy now of prevention. But it's very important, you can, as John says, diary is actually quite important in this disease because patterns change. And people often say, you know, I get the diarrhea, and the first question I ask is, what have you been, it's changed. Have you done anything differently? We forget. I mean, if you ask yourself, what did you eat yesterday? You can remember every meal that you had through the day. You probably won't, or you might for yesterday, but certainly will forget the day before. And so I often get my patients to use a diary, particularly if their symptoms are not controlled, to see if there's some patterns. Not so much for diarrhea. Well, actually for diarrhea, so we did a study of one of the new drugs, and actually the study's success was based on demonstrating objectively that there was a reduced pattern and frequency of diarrhea. And that's how we demonstrated success of that drug.
And I'll just add with the cards, there's little wallet cards that are out on the table outside, which one is for carcinoid crisis. So it gives an indication of what needs to be done for that person. So if you carry it in your wallet all the time, the other one is going to tie in nicely with the diarrhea. It's a little card that says you need to use the toilet urgently because you have a medical condition. So you can show the card. If you say to somebody, go to a shop and say, I need to use your toilet, and they go, oh yeah, show this card. It's got the Unicorn Foundation, everything on it. It's been validated. So that, yeah, you can use the toilet. And also talking about recording, I will be going through shortly the app that's going with our Planet Registry, and that's going to be a perfect way that you can actually record, and I'll show you what the Bristol scale and what you can put. But your doctor can actually get into that if you're not there. So if you've got a problem, you can ring your doctor and they're going to actually be able to see what's happening in the pattern with that app, but I'll go through that shortly.
Alexander, I've got a question for you from Sandra. What criteria are used to determine the resectability or not of tumours?
Well, that's we have till 10. I think most of it depends on whether it's primary. So it depends on whether it's primary or whether it's metastatic. It's a very different approach. It depends on the physiology of the patients. What is your reserve? What can you handle? And some of these operations are fairly big. And it also depends on your wishes, and that then coincides with what is your functional outcome after surgery, which in some cases is very different in terms of where the location of the tumor is. For example, if you take out the pancreas, we have the means to make you better in terms of supplying you with all the necessary enzymes and hormones. It's a very different story if you talk about small bowel. And in small bowel, it's not so much the simple tumor that's in the lumen of the small bowel. It's always to do with the lymph nodes or tumor mass that's in what we call the mesentery, which is the band carrying the blood vessels that support the small bowel. Now, if the surgery involves removing that tumor and then it sacrifices the blood flow to the small bowel, you lose your small bowel. You can't live without small bowel. There's no quality of life in that. So it depends on where the tumor is in primary surgery. And certainly in secondary surgery, it's how the tumor reacts, what sort of complications you have from the tumor. Does it respond to therapy? And if we don't have non-invasive therapy, do you need to take it out? Even if there are other spots where there is a tumor. And then everything depends in surgery on how good the blood flow is after you've done the surgery. So because wounds don't heal without blood flow. So and then specifically on small bowel nets, it's very much dependent on whether there's enough blood flow centrally to support the rest of the small bowel. That often dictates whether or not your small bowel net with masses in that mesentery can be resected. I think all in all, it's of course complex, but it's very much a discussion, I think, in what the functional outcome is after resection and what you can live with, but also what your physiological reserve is in terms of how good you can resist major surgery.
We've got a couple more questions, and then we might move to the next session with Meredith. So one of the other questions we have, I think it's reporting to genetic risk, predisposition. The question refers to a child of a parent with a small intestinal net having an increased risk of getting a tumour. I'll start the ball rolling, perhaps others on the panel can add it. There are a small subgroup of patients who have hereditary syndromes where it's clearly defined predisposition to neuroendocrine tumours, and not just of the gut or the pancreas, but of the thyroid and paragangliomas and other tumours. And they're well described, and a family history will often define those particular risks, and those patients can have selective screening to be checked for those. Others want to add to the panel discussion?
Yeah, it's just that, like, with the rarer subtypes, the pheochromocytomas and the like, there is always a need to investigate if there is family history, because even people, like, they don't forget. They say, I had a relative who died of something that no one knew what it was. And like, if you ask more when there is something unusual, you could discover that there is like a pattern. With each patient, I always surprised when someone comes with a disease like this and they've had another family member and they haven't been referred for genetic counseling. So I think it's very important to keep an open mind. If there is something unusual, then maybe you should have an unusual approach to find out if there is a genetic predisposition, because you might be able to prevent a disaster in a young person. So there is, for example, a condition that has almost 100% chance of getting thyroid cancer. If you find out about it early, you can have the thyroid removed, so eliminate the risk of cancer. It's rare, but it does exist. I guess nowadays, because the median expected survival of an Australian individual is quite high, because you have so many years to live. There are a lot of people who had more than one cancer. It doesn't mean it's a hereditary syndrome. It means that the longer you live, the more likely you are at risk of having diseases, including cancer. It's not automatically a genetic problem. But having said that, if there is more than one, it's always good to think about it.
The lifetime risk, as they say now, of getting a cancer if you're a male is 1 in 2 to the age of 85 and 1 in 3 for a female to the age of 85. So as we live longer, we outlive heart disease. And something
maybe the question is actually, now I have neuroendocrine disease. There's no one in my family, no history. What are my chances that my kids will have it? I think that is the main question, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. You have to make a distinction between that question and the scientific answer. I think in most cases it's what we call sporadic, meaning that it's not part of a hereditary pattern, but in specific unusual neuroendocrine cancers, it could be hereditary. And you should have that discussion with your doctor, I guess, because it's not black and white just to say yes or no.
So 2 more questions have been posed. One I want to pose to you, Alexander. Can NETs be misdiagnosed as achalasia? It shouldn't be, but one would hope not. So, but not, yeah.
I'm a colorectal surgeon. Achalasia, his esophagus is really the other end of the spectrum. But anything that causes obstruction or causes something to intercept, and that's an interesting concept. Is if you have something in the bowel moves, and if you have something in the bowel sometimes telescopes into itself. That causes pain and obstruction. So anything that that obstructs something which is hollow, like esophagus, can give you almost like a colicky pain in your esophagus. So yes, I think it could be, but it would be a rare occasion, wouldn't it? Because esophageal NET is really rare, and achalasia is not that. It's not that frequent a disease.
The other question I think refers to survival. What is the average survival? I could certainly answer it by saying what the 5-year survival is. The pool 5-year survival for most studies now was 60%, now it's over 65% 5-year survival of all neuroendocrine tumours of all stages. But individual tumours and individual subtypes can have different prognosis. Any other last questions?
Are you people actively looking for people to join clinical trials?
Yes, so to answer your question, there are clinical trials where we are addressing therapy, and those trials are applicable to patients whose disease needs treatment, and if that treatment's appropriate for them, we're certainly looking for those. We are looking for patients to participate in clinical trials where we're asking questions to gain information. So there's a trial being conducted out of the Peter McCallum that we're participating in that is looking at patients' symptoms and trying to address their symptom burden. There's another one that's addressing what's called financial toxicity. What's the impact of the cost of their illness to the patient? And one of the reasons we want to gain that information is particularly with lobbying for the government to demonstrate, particularly as I said before, this is a disease by compounding interest. The more people that are alive with it, the more impact it has on them. And all the tests and therapies have an impact on them. But we have no information to help go to government with to demonstrate that. So those types of questionnaire-based studies are being conducted in our facility here and across the road. And we often forget to ask the patient, would you mind filling out this questionnaire? If you're interested in filling out those sort of studies, you're not on a treatment pathway at the moment because your disease is under control. There's plenty of those around. And we can, I guess, perhaps through Meredith, put you on to where those studies could be addressed.
Yeah, just contact the Unicorn Foundation, and there is actually a link through to do the financial toxicity. If you have problems with doing that through the link, we can actually send you out paper copies. So,
well, if there aren't any more questions, we may move on to the Unicorn Foundation patient app presentation. Thank you, Meredith.
sent it through yesterday. I will in a minute.
Fantastic.
Might just grab my glasses. Okay, so we did talk briefly about the app, but there's the Planet Registry, which we're currently putting through ethics. And you're talking about collaboration. The Planet Registry is actually going to be a national registry for neuroendocrine patients. So I just thought I'd just touch again on the mission of the Unicorn Foundation to assist and support patients and carers through support groups and access to networks of expertise, to lobby for access to new and appropriate investigations and treatments, to raise awareness and knowledge of neuroendocrine cancers in the medical community and general public, and to encourage and support Australian research in the area of neuroendocrine cancers. So the Planet Registry, it's called Planet because we're planning to look into further with NETs. So it's a new era in the optimal planning of treatment and research of neuroendocrine cancers in Australia. And we give special thanks to Ipsen, Melbourne University, who has actually put the software together for it, and the Planet Committee, which is a collaborative group of oncologists from around Australia. So, where do we play? This is, sorry about the first picture. There was just a nice screenshot of the front.
No.
It's always the way, isn't it? It works before you come out here.
Just a bit slow today. Just pop it into Firefox. I know that's going to work.
So there's no sound with it anyway. But I just wanted to highlight with it especially that all the data that is actually being gathered is stored securely and safely, and it's all de-identified, so it does not have your name on it at all. We will go through that it's all collected and that there is total consent before people can go into it. And you can only be on this app if you've been to a clinician who's actually given you a unique code, which you put in then. So the code goes in where your name is and then you sign for it. So unlike the My Health and everything, your name is not there and it's kept at Melbourne University. It's not being shared around the place. So as you could see, there was a quality of life survey. We'll get there. So the patient actually enters in the quality of life and it's done periodically. And this is actually an international quality of life survey. And we'll go through shortly and show you some of the questions that are on there, just your normal activity and everything. You go through, you just have to click on the button, nice and easy to use. If you don't click on a button properly, then it's not going to let you progress any further. It'll actually make you come back and make sure that you have filled it in. But it's going through appetite, nausea, whether you're constipated, tired, difficulty with concentration. It's just a very good overview. But as I said, it's international. It's all been totally approved and it's best practice as well. And it's usable for iPhones and Android. So anybody basically that's got a phone can be using it. So it's just basically going through, I think there's 51 questions on it. And then it says that it's not finished. So it'll take you back to the ones that you haven't done. And then you can go through and you see that you've answered everything. And it graphs it. And your doctor can actually see all this as well. So then we go on to the next one, which is the Bristol Stool Scale. And this one you can fill in what your bowels are doing. And you get to choose from what type it is. And exactly what time you went. So yeah, you can pick out which one's the best one. And I think they're pretty descriptive anyway. So, and then you can go through to the weekly vitals, which is looking at your weight, your height, which is not going to change, and body fat. So, I mean, it's a very good way, especially if you have got a lot of diarrhea, that you can notice what the weight's up to. And as we were saying before, it's a diary. So you don't have to be writing things down. You can be clicking on it, and then your doctor's got a complete record when you actually go in for your consultation. So it's... And the last one that's on there is ECOG, which is looking at your performance status. So it's looking at how well you can do things, whether you can do a lot of activity, very little activity, and you can see whether or not there's any changes with that. And then all these reports can be printed out as well. I think it's all graphed. With the app also, it does have the ability to do push alerts. So with all the information that's put in for the Planet Registry, if you there's a trial or anything that's available, then it can actually, your doctor can push alert through to say that there could be a trial that you could be recruited to. And you've got control over it. You can change your font if you can't, your eyesight's not that good. I know I'm half the time, if I haven't got my glasses, I've got my phone out like this and squinting, so you can change everything and make it very user-friendly. So that's it. Yes?
I'm assuming you had vitals on there, but you had nothing about heart rate or blood pressure. Does that mean this app is not for patients with VOs or paras?
We originally were going to put in blood pressure and everything, but then we thought some people are not going to be able to do that. So down the track, POs and paras, it can be, this is the starting phase. We thought we'd start nice and simple, and then we can sort of progress it as we go further. We're back on my things, yep. Okay, so as I said, the Planet Registry is there because we wanted to further research, also the opportunity for clinical trials, advocacy and supportive care. So everything that goes into the Planet Registry from the outset is going to help build on things. So it's a world first net registry. There's nothing in Europe with this. We're the first ones, and we've got 5, or actually more than 5 sites, but we've got Western Australia, South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland. And there's some of the states have got various hospitals that are doing them there. So it's in partnership. The patients are actually very much part of the Planet Registry. So you can opt in or opt out. You don't have to be part of it if you don't want to, but we're hoping that everybody will, because by collecting this information, we're actually going to know how many patients with NETs, paras, VOs, everybody are out there. At the moment, we just don't know who's out there. So by having this, we can be getting consistent information, and then we can be looking at the future directions for NET treatments. So it's been developed in consultation with patients, and with the Unicorn Foundation, we have a consumer advisory group, which are actually, I think we've got a few of them that are in the room, but they're patients that have put their hands up, or carers, so that they can actually help us to work on different things We run basically all like a GP survey. We ran through the consumer advisory group to see whether or not they thought that it was appropriate and if there's something that we'd missed. So it's vitally important that we have the consumer input and also the Planet Registry Committee. So as I said, only patients linked to the registry can access the app with a unique code and it's de-identified. And it also enables patients to fill in how they feel with the quality of life, the Bristol Stool Scale, the ECOG and measurements. And the app is only effective if it's used. So we really push for everybody who is able to use it, to use it. The information gathered is currently part of your clinical care. So it's not actually changing what's happening. There's a lot of paperwork that gets done by the oncologist. At least with this, it can go into there and then we've got a record of it and it's well stored. And so it provides better management and a consistent and streamlined system of collection to monitor live data with the registry and the app. And it reduces stress for everybody, really. So you don't have to be trying to remember, did I have this last week? Or the doctor says, you know, did you have diarrhea? Did you have nausea? And you think, oh, no, I didn't. And then you go out of the consult and you think, yes, I did. So it makes it a lot easier. I mean, I know when I was doing chemotherapies, I always said to somebody, put a piece of paper next to your bed with a pen, because you wake up in the middle of the night with something, write it down, and then when you go to your doctor, you've got that piece of paper so you can remember it. But with the app, at least you can roll over, type something in, and it's there for you. It's going to, as I said, it's going through ethics at Peter Mac at the moment, and then we'll roll it out to the other sites. So it's going to start at Peter Mac first. Then we're hoping Royal North Shore is the next one to come through. Research and development is very much part of it. So the app contributes to the cancer research. Clinical trials will be able to look at what's happening with all the data, and then we can look at what clinical trials can be done. As I said, push alerts for clinical trials and optimal treatments and enhancement of care. The registry and app, they're world class and they're the first of their kind, and it's really been impressing international clinicians, and we're hoping that once we've got this rolled out in Australia, it will actually go to Europe as well. So a lot of the clinicians at ENETS are very keen to have it as part of theirs. And the Federal Health Department, when it was presented to them, were absolutely ecstatic about it and were so impressed. So the commitment and collaboration of our clinicians and the level of software and security development by the research department in Melbourne University is something that we're really proud of, because we have phone teleconferences at like 8 o'clock at night, sort of every couple of months, and it's amazing. Everybody is on there. I know half the time sort of you're sort of sitting there in your jammies or whatever, and I know a lot of the doctors are just about ready to go to sleep. Yeah, they're all very keen to be part of it, and it's just fabulous to be working in a team that sort of is so passionate about doing something in collaboration with the patients, especially as well. So what we're saying is help us to help you, so get involved. So thank you.
And I just wish to thank Meredith and obviously the whole team on this. It has been a labour of love, and ever since the inception of the Unicorn Foundation, the biggest goal that Simone and I have had is to get a database up and running. Nothing, you know, as in health consumer, nothing about us without us. You know, we don't know who's out there. And if you want to do anything, don't do a cup sale for Cancer Council. Just get the app, get online. You know, you'll have octreotide brain or something like that. A lot of the time you go to your consultant and you've forgotten exactly what Meredith said, everything that's happened in the last 6 months. This is the most potent tool to change NETs in Australia and hopefully globally, is collection of data, because we're rare. If we get everyone together, we have so much more knowledge, and that will help direct our surgeons, physicians and scientists. So this is worth the effort. And I implore you, if nothing else, Unicorn Foundation needs your support of this to help yourselves and future patients. So this is nothing to scoff at, and I'd be really disappointed if every single one of you didn't download the app and get involved.
When you go to your oncologist, so it'll be one of the, to start off with, the doctors that are actually in the committee, and then you will get the code at that consult, and then you can go through it. But we will have people around to help you with uploading and doing all that at the outset, so that, yeah, if you're tech like me, yeah, be there going, which one do I press? And yeah.
Once it's ethics approved here and across the road, we'll have a system whereby the patients get that easily without difficulty.
Yep, it'll be a complete system.
But at the moment, it's not approved and it's not ready yet, but it will be shortly.
We're hoping by the end of August that it will. Fingers crossed.
Is there a question at the back?
Would it be available to patients that aren't at Petermac and North Shore? So if you're a private oncologist, will you still be able to participate?
Down the track, yes, yes. We're just starting with the sort of the major sites to start off with, but yes, it's a national registry. So, and if you haven't had any success, contact the Unicorn Foundation and we'll see what we can do.
Well, it's quite late in the evening and I want to probably close up now. Just want to say thank you to the panel for their contributions tonight. Thank you, particularly Katie, for making yourself so open to everyone. Sharing your experience. Thanks to Sydney Vital for hosting the event, the Unicorn Foundation for their contribution generally in the area of neuroendocrine tumours in Australia and nationally. And also thank you to you all for coming here. It's a privilege to actually have an audience that's so passionate and interested, and it's what keeps us going and wanting to do research. So thank you. Nice deflection of the achalasia question. It's such a good
Great. Excellent. I'm glad you haven't been here for a while. I've had a couple of